You're 10 years old. Your mother won't stop crying. She's gripping your shoulder so hard it hurts. And in the last second before the soldiers reach you, she presses something small and rough into your palm and closes your fingers around it. A tiny wooden cross, worn smooth from years on a string around her own neck. Hide it, she whispers. Never let them see it. Outside, there are soldiers. They're not shouting. They're calm, organized. Checking names off a list like this is just another Tuesday. By sunset, your mother will still have 2 children, but only one of them will remember her. Here's the strange part. It isn't that you're about to be taken from everything you've ever known. It's that 20 years from now you'll be standing in the uniform of the empire that took you, marching toward the very hills you were born in. And you'll be the one who decides not to go home. Not because you can't, because you're afraid to. Let's rewind. Your village sits in the hills, one of hundreds scattered across land the empire conquered before you were born. Life here is small and familiar. The same church, the same handful of families, the same fields you've walked your whole short life. You've heard whispers about the list the officers keep, the one with every baptized boy's name on it. It always felt like a story about someone else's son. This year it isn't. The list has your name on it, and your family has no way to stop what happens next. The soldiers separate you from a dozen other boys, roping you loosely together, and march you out of the only home you've ever known. Behind you, mothers are screaming. One throws herself at a soldier and is shoved to the ground. Your mother doesn't scream. She just watches you go, one hand pressed flat against her chest, right where the cross used to hang. You close your fist tighter around the small wooden shape hidden in your palm. It's the only thing left that's still yours. Within days, even your name won't belong to you anymore. You march for weeks alongside boys from villages you've never heard of. When you arrive at the capital, an official records your birth name, your village, your father's name, then gives you a new one, a new faith, a new language you're expected to learn or be beaten until you do. Here's the detail that catches you completely off guard. The life you're entering forbids marriage, family, and the ordinary future you once imagined. You're never allowed to grow a beard either, so that any officer anywhere in the empire can identify what you are on sight. You brace for this to be framed as a punishment. Instead, they call it the greatest opportunity of your life. And in the cruelest twist you've ever felt, they might actually mean it. You're placed among hundreds of taken boys, sorted by ability. Sharp minds pulled one way, strong bodies pulled another. It's not cruelty for its own sake. It's a machine centuries old, built to manufacture the most loyal elite class in the empire. Soldiers with no families to protect, no old loyalties, only the Sultan. In the barracks, you meet a boy from 2 valleys over from your own village. You don't share a language at first, but you share something else. The same look in his eyes that says, I don't understand how this is my life now. At night, when no one's watching, you show him the small wooden cross. He doesn't have one of his own. He just nods like he understands exactly what it means to carry something you're not allowed to keep. You're sorted onto the military track. He's pulled somewhere else entirely. And it's the second time in your life someone decides where you belong without asking you. Your friend is sorted into palace administration, training for record keeping, the quiet machinery of empire. You're sorted into the barracks. Overnight, the one person who understood exactly what you both lost is somewhere you can't easily reach. You tell yourself the men training beside you now are your family. In a strange way they are. And here's the part that will genuinely surprise you. Despite everything taken from you, soldiers like you are paid better, fed better, and treated with more privilege than most noble-born officers in the regular army. The empire didn't just strip you down. It rebuilt you into something it needed to keep happy. One night, the smallest recruit in your barracks, a boy who can't be older than 9, misses his ration after collapsing during drills. Without a word, every boy in the room quietly tears off a piece of his own bread and passes it down the line until there's a full meal sitting in front of him again. Nobody mentions it. Nobody has to. Some nights, you still see your mother's face in a second before you were taken. You keep the cross hidden inside the lining of your uniform. exactly where no inspection has ever thought to look. Years pass in that barracks. Then one day, you're finally handed a real weapon. And the hardest lesson isn't learning how to kill. It's learning exactly who deserves your loyalty. The Empire is always expanding, and it needs soldiers who won't hesitate. Before your unit marches out for your first real campaign, you press your palm flat against your chest, feeling the small, hard shape beneath the fabric. The way you've started doing before anything that scares you. Nothing about your training fully prepares you for what your body does anyway, on instinct. To survive, you live. Boys you trained beside for years don't. Afterward, you feel something you didn't expect, something close to pride. Your commanding officers notice you. Within a year, you're promoted ahead of soldiers twice your age, and for one bright, uncomplicated evening, surrounded by men cheering your name, you let yourself feel something close to happiness. For the first time since the morning you were taken, you feel like something other than property. Sometimes, marching past the palace walls on your way to another campaign, you find yourself wondering if your old friend is behind one of those windows, whether he still has that scrap of cloth from his village, whether he still remembers your birth named the way you still remember his. Then word reaches the camp. Another officer, another list, another village exactly like yours, having exactly what was done to some other terrified boy. And you realize for the first time that the hand gripping the sword now belongs to the very machine that once tore across from your mother's neck. Years later, at a gathering in the capital, you see your old friend again, no longer a frightened boy, but a palace administrator in fine robes, risen faster than you ever did. He tells you quietly what he's learned serving inside the palace. Boys taken exactly like the two of you have gone on to become admirals, provincial governors. One, decades before either of you were born, rose to become Grand Vizier, the second most powerful man in the entire empire. You almost don't recognize him. Then he reaches into his sleeve and shows you something small, a scrap of cloth from his own village, kept hidden the same way you've kept your cross. Neither of you says anything for a long moment. He tells you one more thing before you part ways, something that stops you cold. Men like you, taken exactly this way, have grown so numerous and so trusted that entire sultans have depended on their loyalty to stay in power. In the wrong moment with the wrong grievance, that same loyalty has been known to turn soldiers like you deciding collectively who stays on the throne and who doesn't. The empire built you to be its sword. It never fully accounted for what happens if the sword develops its own opinion. The empire took everything from you both as children. And the empire is also somehow the only reason either of you could ever rise this high. There's no clean way to feel about that. And soon, marching orders will force you to decide which truth actually defines you. Years later, you're given orders for a campaign near the region where you were born, not your exact village, but close enough that the hills on the horizon feel like a memory walking beside you. Your unit passes through a small village to resupply. Your hand finds your chest again out of habit, the same way it does before every battle. An old woman selling bread in the square looks up at you, freezes mid-motion, and stares at your face like she's seeing a ghost. She whispers a name, your birth name, a name you haven't heard spoken aloud in 20 years. You don't answer. You don't know how to answer. She steps closer, close enough that the soldiers around you tense, and says one more thing, quiet enough that only you hear it. Your mother waited every spring. She never believed you died. You know in that moment that your actual village is less than a day's march from where you're standing. You look down the road toward the hills. Your feet move before your mind decides anything. One step, unconscious, automatic. The way water finds a slope. Your hand drifts to your chest, to the small, hard shape hidden beneath your armor. Somewhere behind you, your commanding officer calls your name. Your unit is already forming up to march. You don't move yet. You look back down that road one final time, at the hills, at the woman still watching you from a square. Everything 20 years is both buried and kept perfectly alive. Then you turn around, not because you can't go. The road is right there. Nothing physically stops you. You're afraid to. afraid of who you'd have to explain yourself to be, afraid that the boy who left in that wheat field 20 years ago wouldn't recognize the man standing in his place now, and afraid more than anything that his mother wouldn't either. You lead your unit forward, away from the hills, exactly as ordered. That night, alone, you take the small wooden cross out of the lining of your uniform for the first time in years. You turn it over in your hand the way your mother once did, the way you imagine she still might. Somewhere in those hills, you chose not to climb. You don't wear it. You never have. But you don't throw it away either. You put it back inside your armor, exactly where it's always been, and you keep marching. Somewhere in those hills, an old woman died still believing her son never came home. She was wrong. He came back. He just never knocked on the door. Some empires conquer cities. This one conquered children.